Hey guys, it's Luke Yon, and you probably noticed something different about my background. This is like one of the rooms that I usually film in, and it's actually where I keep some of my bookshelves. It's where I keep all of my read books, and it used to be just this one and a bookshelf over here, which I'm going to show in a minute, but I actually got a third bookshelf, or bookcase, in this room, so now I have three plus a little one with my Cassandra Clare books. I still have the other one, it's just over there. And don't worry, I do plan on doing a full bookshelf tour before the summer is over, so look out for that. But yeah, I'm very excited about this, and I'm still trying to figure out my background. Like, I don't really know where to sit so that I'm positioned in the exact middle, but I'll figure it out. But today I'm actually going to be doing one of my favorite annual videos, and that is the Midyear book Freakout tag. So I have all the questions on my phone, and I'm just gonna run through them. I have a humongous stack of books next to me, so let's just get into the video. So question number one is the best book you've read so far in 2024, and I picked a book that's not like a sequel or anything, because there is a question about sequels, and I added a question about finales in a moment, so I just picked like a standalone book. And that is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This is definitely a book that took me by surprise. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, but it completely engrossed me from like beginning to end for the entire time that I was reading it. It is a book that I definitely plan on rereading, and it is like such a bizarre satirical story that you kind of can't stop reading. Like, it's just, the main character keeps getting herself into these insane situations, and you need to figure out, you know, what she's gonna do, how she's gonna get out of it, how things are gonna play out, and it is a fascinating story. It's a fascinating critique, a fascinating analysis, and I just really, really loved it. It is one of the smartest books I've ever read, and also one of the most engaging because of how well written and like enticing and captivating the plot and writing and characters are. Next is the best sequel you've read so far this year, and I actually have two answers for this. The first is All This Twisted Glory by Tahereh Mafi. This is the third book in the Woven Kingdom series. I have a full reading vlog for this book. Many of you know, Tahereh Mafi is like one of my favorite authors of all time, if not my favorite, and this is her current ongoing series, and this is the third book. It's supposed to be 5 books in total. I cannot wait for information about the fourth book. I really hope it doesn't come out too far from now, but this is the third book, and it was amazing. I read it so fast. It was like, whenever I'm reading these books, I'm not thinking about anything else. They are entirely captivating and transportive and immersive, and I want this series to go on forever. The writing is amazing. I love the characters. The plot is like so intricate, and it's like a slow build, but once you really get to know the characters and the world, like I would literally read these characters going to Target for 500 pages. So yeah, definitely one of my favorite sequels of the year. And the other one is Beasts of Ruin by Iona Gray. This is the second book in the Beasts of Prey trilogy. I also read the third book this year, and this one was even better than the first book, and it actually made me like think back on reading the first book, and I remembered enjoying it more than I feel like I enjoyed it more than I remembered, and just because this one was so fun to read. Like, it was so well plotted, so well paced. The characters really came into their own in this installment, and I loved the writing. The world is one of my favorites, and it was just such an addicting read, and definitely it's one that I would recommend. This is a very underrated series, but the sequel is even better than the first book. Okay, actually I lied. I have 3 answers for this, and the third is The Mirror of Beasts by Alexandra Bracken. This is the sequel to Silver and the Bone, and I actually received an ARC of this book, and I devoured it. It was so good. It is like a Arthurian legend contemporary fantasy, and it's so good. Silver and the Bone was one of my top 3 favorite books of last year, and this one completely lives up to it. It improves upon certain things. It, like, not even improves, it like makes the things that were amazing in the first book even better. I love the writing. I love Alexandra Bracken. She's one of my favorite authors of all time as well. And she always outdoes herself, so definitely one of my favorites, and I will be discussing it more in my next wrap-up video. Next is a question that I like to add every year, and it is the best finale, and I also have 2 books for this, but they're actually by the same author, and that is Victoria Aveyard. So the first book that I want to talk about is Warstorm. I know like Broken Throne is technically the finale because it's like the novella bind-up, but this is like the finale of the main series, and I did not expect this series to take over my life for like the 2 weeks that I was reading it, but it absolutely did, and Warstorm was an amazing conclusion. I know a lot of people had like some qualms with this book and the way it ended. It's a little bit open-ended, but I just think as a whole, like, this book in its entirety is so amazing. It's like 650 or so pages, a little bit over that, and every single page was so gripping and so interesting to read, and it's like the culmination of every single book in this series. Like, the characters, the development and the arcs that they have in this book are so satisfying. The ending, even though it is like a little bit open-ended, I really loved it. It felt very realistic, and I was really, really satisfied with the way that Victoria Aveyard wrapped up this entire series. There were things in it that I didn't even know that I needed until they happened. So yes, definitely, if you are on the fence about like continuing on with the Red Queen series, I definitely would, because this finale brings everything and change. And then the other finale that I want to mention is Fatebreaker by Victoria Aveyard. I'm also going to talk about this in my next wrap-up, but this is the finale to the Realmbreaker series, which has been a series that I've read since it came out in 2021, and this is also just very satisfying. Like, the epilogue, Victoria Aveyard knows how to write an epilogue, and I just thought all of the characters had such amazing, like, ends. Everything came very full circle, and just the way that Victoria Aveyard, like, kind of closed out this enormous world was really, really impressive, and I am very excited to see what she does next. Next is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. The first one that I want to talk about is House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas, the third and final book in the Crescent City series. Part of me can't even believe that I haven't read this book yet because it came out in January, but I do really like Sarah J. Maas's books. I know that they had their issues, and I haven't actually loved all of her recent ones, actually. But I'm still excited to read this book because the cliffhanger at the end of the sequel, or the second book, was very, very interesting, and that's also kind of why I'm shocked I haven't read this book yet, but I'll get to it. It's like 800 pages long, so I need to be in the right headspace, but I do definitely want to get to it, hopefully by the end of the year. And the other one is Destroy the Day by Bridget Kemmerer, the third and final book in the Defy the Night series, another series I've been reading since it came out, or since it, like, started. And this is also pretty long, and another one that I can't really believe I haven't read yet, but I'm definitely going to get to it. I'm still debating whether or not to reread the first and second book. I don't think I need to, but maybe I'll read like a few recaps or watch some BookTube reviews before jumping into this finale. But definitely excited to see how the characters, or how the story concludes, and where the characters go from where they were left off in Defend the Dawn. Next is most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and I actually have 4 for this. I have Wisteria by Adeline Grace. I read the first 2 books in the series this year, and I definitely want to see what's going to happen in the finale. I think it's going to be from like a different character's point of view, mostly, so definitely intrigued to see what the author does with that. Another one is Spectacular by Stephanie Garber. I think this is just going to be like a cute little Christmassy type story set in the, or holiday type story set in the Caraval world, which definitely intrigued about. Then I also have Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez, which is the sequel to What the River Knows, which I read at the end of last year, and I really liked the way it incorporated like the ancient Egyptian mythology, and it also was like a little bit historical itself because it takes place in the 1800s. So not a little bit historical, it is historical. And it definitely ended on a really big cliffhanger, so I want to see where things pick up from there. And then the last one is The Grandest Game by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is a new series set in the world of the Inheritance games, and I think it'll just be like a really fun, easy book to read, so I can't wait for that as well. Okay, I don't know if I mixed up the order of like biggest disappointment and biggest surprise, but whatever. I'll start with biggest disappointment, and I also have 2 books for this, unfortunately. The first is These Rebel Waves by Sarah Rosh. I read this in May, and I just didn't really like it at all. And actually this book and the book that I'm about to mention that's also part of this question have like very similar issues where it felt like it felt like the second book in a series, or it felt like I just needed a longer prologue or more explanation, because both books honestly just push you right in and you're like jumping into the middle of the story, it feels like. So this one was not my favorite. I wanted more like piratey magic, and it was a little bit more like religion and political intrigue. So not my favorite. I don't know if I'm gonna unhaul this book. I'll keep it for like another month or so, and we'll see what I do with it. But so this was the first book that's a part of that answer, and the second one is Incendiary by Zoraida Cordova. I think I still have to talk about this in one of my wrap-ups. I'm not 100% sure. Yes, because I read it in June. But this is a book I've had for like, actually both of these books I've had forever. I've had this one since 2018, and then I have had this one since like 2020, I think, is when it came out, and I just didn't really like it at all. Again, it felt like I was being thrust into the story in the middle, and then I didn't really care about the characters as a result of that. I didn't care about the world. Actually, I did care about the world. I didn't care about the plot. The world I thought was interesting and the magic was cool, but I think that's not enough to really carry you through a story, so I didn't really like this one very much, and I will probably unhaul it as well. So these two will probably be going quite soon. Next is Biggest Surprise. I already talked about one of them, which was Yellowface, but I have 2 more. The first being Castles in Their Bones by Laura Sebastian. This is actually the first book that I read this year, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I was not expecting to fall in love with this story as much as I did, but it was so addicting. I think that's like the theme of the books that I really loved this year, is that they're addicting and fast-paced with really big characters. And I think this one definitely fits into that description. There's so much like stuff happening all the time. Like, I was never bored for a second while reading this, which is a feat in a 500+ page book, but it follows 3 characters, and you know, if one is maybe not doing something super interesting for a chapter, the next chapter is like explosive, and it's just, you really cannot put it down. It's so like gripping and compulsively readable, so this was definitely one that I was shocked to have enjoyed so much. And then the other one was actually Red Queen, and like this entire series, because I actually read this first book years and years ago and I didn't really love it, but I decided to pick it back up again, and I think I was just in the right headspace, and it was like, again, very fast-paced, well-plotted, with like compelling characters. So I think I was just it was like right time, right place sort of situation, which like helped me, which like led me to enjoying this entire saga very, very much. And I would definitely recommend this series if you're looking for like a very quick fantasy sci-fi sort of dystopian-esque series. I mean, everyone has probably either read or chosen not to read this series at this point, but I thought I was never going to read it, and I decided to pick it up, and I really loved it, so definitely a big surprise for me. Next is a favorite new to you author, and man, this one author is coming up a lot, and that is R.F. Kuang. I read, obviously, Yellowface, and then I also read Babel right after, and I was just really impressed with the way that she, like, with how different the stories are, and the way she can really mold her writing style to the type of story and type of genre she's writing in. So yeah, I loved Yellowface for what it was, and I really loved Babel as well, and I'm super excited to read her Poppy War trilogy at some point, and I know she has a book coming out next year as well, which I'm really pumped for. So definitely a new favorite author, and one I'm gonna keep an eye out for, and also one whose backlist I definitely plan on delving into very soon. Next is newest favorite character. Actually, next is newest favorite crush, but I don't really have crushes on like book characters. I don't like think about them that way, so I just moved on. But anyway, newest favorite character is, I have two answers for this. There are a ton I could have picked, but the first is Signa from Belladonna. I really liked her character. I thought that she had a lot of motivation. She was very interesting. I really liked the way her like past unfolded throughout the story, and I liked the way, I don't know, I liked her personality. I thought she was very, very interesting to read about, and I'm excited to see where she goes in the finale. And yeah, she was just very, very a very complex, layered character, which I always appreciate, obviously. And then next are Iris and Roman from Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I think about them a lot, actually, even though I still haven't read the sequel, but that's besides the point. I think about these characters a lot. I thought they were very interesting. This is definitely a more character-driven fantasy, which I think is probably why it like has blown up in the last couple of weeks and months and like the last year. And I just find them very, very, like, complicated people, and I think that their romance is really interesting. I like them together and apart, so definitely some very interesting protagonists, and I am very, very excited to see how they develop in Ruthless Vows as well. Oh, and then I could also mention Marlowe from Death at Mourning House, which is like Maureen Johnson's upcoming book, which I also got an ARC for. I really liked her as well. I thought she was very interesting and very funny as well. And then also, this is like a side character, but there's a character in The Mirror of Beasts by Alexandra Bracken called the Hag of the Moors, who is one of the funniest characters I've ever read about in my life. So those are two bonus answers. Next is a book that made you happy, and for that I picked The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. This is a book that I read while I was on like a mini vacation, and it was just the perfect book. It was very light and cute and exciting, and I was always happy whenever I opened the book. Then after that is a book that made you cry, and for that I have The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna, which is a historical fiction book that takes place during the Dust Bowl. And if you read the ending of this book and you're not brought to tears, you're probably a robot, but no. In all seriousness, I think Kristen Hanna just has a knack for making her readers cry, and this book is no exception. Okay, next is the most beautiful book you've bought or received this year, and this, I've had like the same like kind of answer every single year, and I predict that I will until this series finishes, but it is the UK hardcover, or the Illumicrate special edition of All This Twisted Glory by Tahana Mafi. As you can see up there on my Tahana Mafi shelf, I have The Smoking Kingdom and These Limited Threads in these editions as well. And those have been my answers the last 2 years respectively. And I'm keeping up with the tradition because I just think that Illumicrate has really outdone themselves with these editions. They're some of the most beautiful books that I own, and so yeah, this is the front. They have the sprayed edges on, or they have sprayed edges, and then this is the back, the spine, and then the end papers are pink, and then all the editions are signed as well. So yeah, definitely some of the most beautiful books that I own, and I can't wait to see what the 4th and 5th books look like. Okay, and then I think this is the second to last question. It's the best book to movie adaptation you watched this year, or just adaptation in general, and that definitely has to be the adaptation of My Lady Jane. I read this book 2 or 3 years ago at this point. I can't even remember. But I didn't love the book. Like, I think I gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. It was fine, but it wasn't one of my absolute favorites. But I watched the TV show, and it was really, really enjoyable. I hope they make a second season because it just takes like the parts of the book that I really did enjoy and maximizes them tenfold. I think it's really funny. If you like the show The Great with Elle Fanning and Nicholas Hoult, about Catherine the Great, the My Lady Jane show is definitely very similar, kind of in the same vein. It's like, I described it to one of my friends as like The Great, but like for England, and I think that's a pretty good description if I do say so myself. So yeah, really loved the adaptation of My Lady Jane, and I am very, very hopeful that they will continue making the show. And the last question is what book you need to read by the end of the year. And, I mean, definitely the anticipated books that I haven't read yet that I mentioned earlier, so House of Flame and Shadow and Destroy the Day, and then all the anticipated releases that I mentioned as well, like the 4 that I mentioned before. And then also, like, every single book on my TBR. I don't really have, like, a TBR for the rest of the year, but I'm gonna try to get through as many of the books that I own and haven't read yet as I possibly can. So, yeah. That is it for this video. I really hope you all enjoyed. All of my social media links are in the description box below, and I'll see you soon for a new video. Bye!